Hello and welcome to this tutorial on how to use the Obby components package, which is a package made by Adamo at Unit 2. You can view his documentation on the forum by navigating to forum.crayta.com, and in there you'll be able to see his package guide in the package guide section. And if you scroll through it, you can see that he's given you instructions on how to use the different templates and how to use the scripts for your own kind of customized versions of those components. In order to install the Obby components package, you need to head over to the community tab, type in the filter Obby, and you should be able to find Obby components. You can see I've already installed mine, but if you haven't, click the install button and it will be added to your templates. You'll be able to find these in the template section in your library. And all of the Obby components start with obstacle underscore. They're these 6 here. This game is an obstacle course. It's pretty straightforward. There are 2 checkpoints, one at the beginning, one at the end. I've started by making a simple jump puzzle. It's called a jump puzzle because you have to jump over it in order to solve the puzzle. And I've also added a death obstacle, which comes with the obstacle starter boilerplate kit. So a death obstacle you will have seen, but basically if you touch this, you die. Now you can change the mesh if you want to, the voxel mesh, simply by clicking on the death obstacle or opening the entity editor for it. And then over here, you'll see it says mesh name. And then you can click this create a unique copy of this asset button to create a unique copy of this asset. So here I would change this to be, I don't know, fire death shape, and then I could customize this voxel mesh completely separately from the normal death mesh. So for example, I might turn it into there's no fire, but let's make it into lava. So that's the death obstacle. Now onto the Obby components. So you've got your jump gaps, you've got your death obstacles. This one here, this is called the blast point. So let's navigate over to the templates. Obstacle underscore blast point. To add it to your game world, you click on it there and you click it in your game world. What this does is this is a timed explosion which will shoot the player across the screen. So it could be used either to damage the player, because it can damage the player, or you could use it to make it more unpredictable or more difficult for the player by shooting them into a different place. You can see that it's got 2 scripts attached to it. The first one is the activation timer script. What this does is this is added to all of the obstacle underscores in the Obby components, and these are basically used to turn on and turn off the qualities of those obstacles. So in this situation, the activation timer script will explode the TNT, and it will do so at a random time between 2 and 4 seconds. So if I wanted this to be a specific time, I would uncheck this random activation delay checkbox, and then I could specify an exact amount of time. I want it to explode every 3.5 seconds, for example. But it's quite fun to have it random. It makes it more replayable, although it makes it a little bit more frustrating and a little bit more difficult. So by having this checked, we now have a random time between 2 and 4 seconds. It also has this deactivation section here. So once it's exploded, how long should it wait before it's reset and ready to go again? So at the moment, it will reset over 1 second. So after it's exploded, there will be a 1 second gap, and then it will start the timer for this for its next explosion, which at the moment is between 2 and 4 seconds. So the minimum amount of time from one explosion to the next will be 3 seconds. It will take 1 second from one explosion to calm down, and then at least 2 seconds before the next explosion occurs, up to 4 seconds here. If you like, you can randomize this too, and that will work in the same way as the box above. Looping will determine whether this explodes once or whether this loops. And ideally, all of these Obby components have this looping checkbox, and they already have it set to the one that works best for them. So I would suggest you keep looping at whatever it is already set to. The obstacle blast script you will see on the collision blast obstacle as well. And what this does is it manages how the explosion looks and feels when you're playing the game. So you've got a sound that fires and you've got an explosion effect that fires. So you can change those. The strength is how far away it will shoot the player. So 2,500 could explode them off the edge of this terrain here. The blast radius is how far away from it will affect. So at the moment you can see that this TNT is quite close to this death obstacle and quite close to these landmines. So in fact, I think this explosion would even affect you if you were over here or if you were amongst these landmines. Now that might be something that in your game you want to make it a little bit more challenging, or you may want to reduce that. So you could make it so that the explosion only really happens if you're 250 meters, 2.5 meters away from this. Damage player, and the damage will determine whether this explosion causes damage to the player. Like I said, it could shoot the player off the terrain, so it doesn't necessarily need to cause some damage for it to be an obstacle course component to contend with. These obstacles, these are obstacle_collision blast, and these act exactly like landmines, which is why they have the landmine mesh attached to them. So essentially, the player touches it, it will explode. You can see it's got the activation timer script attached to it. So in this situation, how long between when the player touches the landmine, how long to wait until it explodes? Well, at the moment it's 0, so it's essentially instant. But you could just as easily make this a random amount of time from when the player collides with it to it exploding, or you could give them, I don't know, 2 seconds from when they collide with the landmine to when it explodes. Again, there's a deactivation delay and a deactivation time, which will determine how long before this is reset. Looping is turned off for these because it's done on collision, it doesn't need to loop. And again, there's the obstacle blast script underneath. So you can see with these ones, their damage is much, much greater. It's 1,500, whereas this one is only 250. So 250 will lightly damage the player. It's more of a nuisance that they'll be shot off in an unwanted direction. Whereas with these ones, 1,500 will pretty much kill the player. This is good because this timed one could feel a little bit frustrating because it could just be happening at random times. You could just be exploded and shot off the map, which would make it really, really difficult. And also you feel like you can't really get it right. Whereas these ones, it's just about navigating. So this is more about skill and this is more about luck. The next obstacles in my obstacle course are these ones. So here we have the obstacle falling platform. And what this does is when the player enters this trigger, the platform will wobble for a short amount of time before it disappears. It's a classic mechanic. So in here you can see the activation timer script. So this will determine this time how long to wait between when the player enters the trigger to when the platform falls, how long to wait before the platform is reset. And then there's this obstacle fall script, which you can use to completely customize the wobbling factor and the direction of the wobble. So the more wobbles in the less time, the faster it will wobble. And obviously the converse, the less wobbles in the amount of time, the slower it will wobble. And the direction it will wobble in, as well as the sound. And then the fall vector of that platform. So will it fall down? Does it fall sideways? Does it shoot up? Well, how does that platform behave once it's finished that wobble? Which direction does it fall in? I've given my players an alternative route here because I've also given them this, which is an invisible platform. So they won't see this when they're running along. This won't be obviously there. But if they were to enter this trigger, then the platform shows. So again, it's got the activation timer script and it's instant. So the activation time is set to 0, which means as soon as you enter that trigger, it shows the platform. Deactivation time is 4, so the platform will show for 4 seconds. Notice though that this only changes the visibility of the platform. The platform is always collidable, so it doesn't make it disappear, it just makes it invisible. The swinging axe is a swinging axe. So this is this obstacle underscore swinging axe here, and what this does is essentially when a player enters this trigger volume here, the axe starts swinging. If the player touches the axe, they get hurt or possibly die. You can see that it's got activation timer script again, so this will affect how long to wait between when the player enters the trigger to it swinging, and how long until it resets once it's completed its swing. Here you can see it also has the obstacle swing script, which is how you can completely customize the script, the swing itself. So what angle it starts at, how long, how much swing to take off each time. So it will swing a quarter of the original angle, and then three quarters of the original angle, and 3/4 of the original angle, and so on. Which axis to swing on, how long to swing for, the number of swings, and then also the sound that it will make as it swings through the air. Now, if you wanted to customize what was actually swinging, you can navigate to the child of this obstacle swing locator, which is axe. And in here, you can see that the mesh asset is set to the swinging blade. If you wanted to change this to be a different mesh asset, you could either drag and drop from your meshes in the library, or you can change it by navigating through this drop down. Notice it's also got a death collision script, which means that different death messages can appear depending on if you hit this one. Same for this death object over here. So if you touch that death obstacle, you can completely customize what it says when you die. And this last obstacle is the timed blocker. So if I navigate to the templates tab, that's the obstacle underscore timed blocker. This is really similar to the invisible platform in that we can turn on and off this. This is a mesh, a voxel mesh, and essentially we can turn on and off its visibility. So I've made it so that it's the full width, which is possibly a bit annoying. So I'm just going to move it to one side. So this will appear and disappear depending on these times in the activation timer script. So it will appear between 1 and 4 seconds, then it will wait, and it will randomly disappear between 1 and 4 seconds on the way out. So that's my obstacle course. Let's see if it's completable. It's worth testing your obstacles as and when you add them. So that's those ones. Obviously had to have the classic jump death. Let's see whether these work. Yep, that's definitely in good working order, that landmine. See these falling platforms. They notice they fall down. That blade swings. This appears, and notice I can't walk through it, and then it disappears and I can walk through it. And then we reach the final checkpoint. So that's it. That's the Obby components. Notice they're all very, very customizable. You can completely change how they look and feel and what they can do for your game. And using those and the obstacle course starter set means that you can very, very quickly get an obstacle course up and running. And then it's down to theming and getting creative and making it really exciting and cool. And a couple of tips. One would be to make sure that the start is easier than the end. Don't start really, really hard because that can be quite frustrating for your players. And make sure that it's doable. Don't make an impossible obstacle course, especially at the end, because that can be really, really frustrating too. Remember that players want to have fun when they're playing your game. So making an obstacle course, which is something you can master with enough practice, is definitely something worth doing and can make the game really rewarding and fun for your players as well. That's it. That's my tutorial on the Obby components. I look forward to seeing what you make with them, and I look forward to playing some of your obstacle courses in Crayta.